everybody. Welcome to EMS1 News. My name is Ed Bowder from the Overrun. Let's get into today's story. In Texas, Jeff Davis County EMS Chief Peggy Fonseca has been fired over concerns of budgeting for both the volunteer and paid staff in her town. Specifically, the town was concerned about extra costs and budget overages. Now, Ms. Fonseca a couple of years ago was charged with not providing CPR to a patient on scene, and that's important to mention in this context. But she was allowed to take a remediation course and allowed to go back out onto the road. The criticisms for Ms. Fonseca have primarily been that the budgets do not so much cover the services in the town, and the EMS agencies have moved to do a hybrid volunteer and paid model. Now, this volunteer and paid model has cost more to the county, and of course, the county is upset that that's cost more money. Ms. Fonseca has contended that because there's not enough volunteers, you have to increase the paid staff. Increasing the paid staff is obviously going to increase the need for funding and for money. And this is an issue that we're seeing across the country. When we have volunteer services that aren't able to supplement the paid services, aren't able to get out at all, we know that there's a problem in responding. And one of the problems that we see both in local EMS agencies and certainly with this EMS agency, the living wage in Jeff Davis County for one person is $19.27 an hour. And a lot of these providers just aren't making that. So there's an issue in Texas and indeed across the country with EMTs and paramedics too, being underpaid and having to respond to calls as part of their volunteer duties at the end of their day. So if you're someone who is working a full-time job, perhaps you and your spouse are both working full-time jobs, and you volunteer for your town's agency, you have to come home after this long day, and then you have to go out onto the road, and that has led to reduced volunteerism in EMS. If we're going to continue to provide these services, something that we're going to have to start to realize and accept is that EMS as a service cannot be a money-making entity. Services are not designed to generate revenue. In a lot of places across the country, you see this in the fire model, where the fire EMS model is supplemented by tax income or by other stipends from the town. Volunteer agencies don't often get that same luxury and don't often get those same allowances. So here we have another example of an EMS agency trying to make things better given the tools that are available to them, and they're not given the proper resources. Jeff Davis County is in a situation now where they have paid organizations and volunteer organizations, and they're still charging too much money. They still have people who are working too much overtime because they can't have their own staff levels to be increased. And this is something that maybe the state has to jump into. Maybe we need some sort of federal system to increase the recruitment of EMTs. But this is the latest example of staffing shortages causing significant problems in organizations. This is a problem that is both an issue with the staffing, an issue with Ms. Fonseca, but also is an issue with Jeff Davis County specifically. If we don't have enough providers, we're not going to be able to get out to the calls that we want. And if we can't get out to the calls, people are not going to get better and people are going to die over it. Ms. Fonseca has called this a witch hunt, and she has also denied these allegations. And Texas officials are moving to try to improve the system in Jeff Davis County. Keep an eye out on EMS1 and follow us on the Overrun for more information. And again, for EMS1 News, I'm Ed Bowder.